Hey everybody, welcome back for some more Appalachian music history. Today we are at large in Johnson City, Tennessee. This is part 2 in our series of Appalachian music history in the Tri-Cities, Bristol, Kingsport, and Johnson City, Tennessee. Much like its cousin city, Bristol, Johnson City was founded just before the Civil War as a small yet important railroad town. As the railroad grew throughout Appalachia and the South, so did Johnson City. This allowed countless songs to be passed through the region in a wide array of genres, such as gospel, blues, vaudeville and minstrel tunes, old-time string music, and what would eventually become known as bluegrass. By the 1920s, Johnson City had earned the nickname Little Chicago due to its reputation of crime, bootleg alcohol, and good music. Local lore even says that infamous Chicago gangster Al Capone would come to Johnson City during Prohibition to buy bootlegged whiskey and would stay at this building called Montrose Court. Throughout the Roaring Twenties, the train saw many musicians come to and through Johnson City. Some stayed, some didn't. Local lore also says that legendary Texas blues musician Blind Lemon Jefferson would bring his style of country blues to Johnson City while he traveled through the region in the 1920s. Another musician to spend time in Johnson City throughout the 1920s was Jimmie Rodgers, the singing brakeman himself, from Meridian, Mississippi. His and the Carter family's massive record sales launched him into superstardom after the 1927 Bristol sessions with Ralph Peer and Victor Talking Machine Records. Shortly after, other record labels scrambled to recreate that success with talent of their own. The following year, in 1928, Columbia Records held a recording session in Johnson City, and then another one in 1929. These eventually became known as the Johnson City Sessions. On October 3, 1928, the Johnson City Chronicle released an advertisement from Columbia Records that asked local residents, "Can you sing or play old-time music?" Columbia record producer Frank Buckley Walker was eager to record musicians from the Johnson City area after seeing Ralph Peer's success with the Carter family and Jimmie Rodgers a year prior in Bristol. Frank Walker had an ear for talent, and a few years previously had worked with Empress of the Blues Bessie Smith and also famed blues musician Blind Willie Johnson. Many talented artists responded to the ad from the Johnson City area and the surrounding regions, and later that month in October 1928, many recordings were made in Johnson City that have since become influential standards in old-time and bluegrass music. The first round of recording happened for the Johnson City Sessions in October 1928. One band that recorded was a group called the Grant Brothers, which consisted of former members of the Teneva Ramblers, Jimmie Rodgers' old band. The Grant Brothers recorded a song called Tell It to Me, a song about looking for money to buy drugs with. Almost 8 decades later, a folk group called Old Crow Medicine Show would cover this song in the 2000s. And there's a song on their self-titled debut album that mentions Johnson City. If you know, you know. You know. Another artist to record in Johnson City in 1928 was Clarence Green, a guitar player and fiddler from Cranberry Gap, North Carolina. Clarence Green was influenced by Blind Lemon Jefferson earlier in the decade when Blind Lemon Jefferson would come to Johnson City to play music. You can really hear Blind Lemon Jefferson's influence on Clarence Green's guitar playing in his recording of Johnson City Blues. Perhaps the most influential artist to record in the 1928 round of the Bristol Sessions was Fiddlin' Charlie Bowman from nearby Gray, Tennessee. Charlie Bowman was already an accomplished fiddler in the region by the time Frank Walker came to town. Charlie Bowman recorded one of his original songs, Roll On Buddy, in 1928 with Frank Walker, and eventually this song became a bluegrass standard and can still be heard at bluegrass jams even today. Charlie Bowman also recorded a song called Gonna Raise the Ruckus Tonight that day, which was also covered by Old Crow Medicine Show almost 80 years later. Those boys sure do love 'em some Johnson City. Almost a year exactly after the first round of recording had concluded, Frank Walker held a second recording session in Johnson City in October 1929. During this round of recording, a group called the Bentley Boys recorded a song called Down on Penny's Farm, which would later be influential on a young Bob Dylan during the 1960s folk revival. And honestly, if you listen to the song, it sounds like a Bob Dylan song.
The hard times in the country out on Tennis Farm.
Another artist to record at the 1929 Johnson City sessions was Ellis Williams, aka L. Watson, who we spoke about in the Bristol Music History video. Mr. Watson's recording career started 2 years previously when he recorded with Ralph Peer for Victor Talking Machine Records during the Bristol sessions, in which he was the only African American musician. L. Watson played the bones and the harmonica during that session, and Ralph Peer liked him so much that he invited him to do more recordings with him for Victor Talking Machine Records. And the executives at the record label must have had high hopes for these recordings, because they even took out a large ad in the Afro-American, a Baltimore, Maryland newspaper, that featured Mr. Watson's recording of One Sock Blues in its race records section. Historians are sure that Ellis Williams and L. Watson are the same person, because L. Watson would have still been under contract with Victor, so he had to use a different name when he recorded with Columbia. Probably the most prolific participant in the 1929 Johnson City sessions is Clarence Tom Ashley, a banjo player and songster who was born in Bristol, Tennessee, but raised in a community just outside of Mountain City, Tennessee. Clarence Ashley is a cool figure in old-time music history. He pops up in the most unexpected places. He was close friends with pioneer old-time fiddler G.B. Grayson. He was the mentor to Nashville star Roy Acuff and also a young Doc Watson. And he also performed with the Clinch Mountain Boys, the backing band for the Stanley Brothers, in the 40s. And if that wasn't enough, he even recorded the first version of House of the Rising Sun with another member of the Carolina Tar Heels in 1933. But I digress. For the 1929 Johnson City sessions, Clarence Ashley contributed The Cuckoo Bird, which is by far his most well-known work. The Johnson City sessions concluded in October 1929. Unfortunately, that's also when the stock market crash of 1929 happened, which caused the Great Depression. So record sales for the Johnson City sessions weren't nearly as good as they were for the Bristol sessions. However, many tunes from both sessions were included in Harry Smith's Anthology of American Folk Music, which was released in the 1950s and was instrumental in the renewed interest of folk music in the 1960s, and also had a profound impact on artists such as Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Doc Watson, and Jerry Garcia. Well, this video is running a little long, so I'm going to break this up into 2 parts. So I hope you enjoyed the first part to the music history of Johnson City. Stay tuned. P.S. The information in this video comes from Ted Olson, Professor of Appalachian Studies at East Tennessee State University, Bob Cox, a historian of Johnson City, and the Birthplace of Country Music Museum website.